What's up, people? This is the Believe in Saints podcast, and I am Mario Jerez, Spanish play-by-play voice of the Saints, native New Orleanian. She is my co-host, Erin Summers, season reporter covering the Saints and the NFL as a whole, and I am happy to say that today we have our first guest on the program. He is former Saints offensive lineman, Super Bowl champion Jon Stinchcomb, also does some game day analyst work for the Georgia Bulldogs radio network. Jon, very excited for the time today. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Appreciate y'all having me on.
Yes, sir. And there's lots we want to talk to you about. Obviously, the upcoming season, some of your favorite memories playing for the Saints. I'm sure you have a lot of them. And the Saints drafted not one, but two Georgia Bulldogs on each side of the football. We'll get your thoughts on all of that throughout the show today. But just to start, man, it's not every day that we talk to a former offensive lineman on the show. So I want to start right there in your wheelhouse. The Saints addressed offensive line this offseason, picking up David Edwards. I feel like they have a good mix of youth and veteran leadership. What are your thoughts on that group as a whole as we enter this new season?
Well, Saints continue to do what they've done for the past 2 decades, and that's invest very heavily in offensive line play. You look at the draft, you look at free agency, and it's a priority. And obviously with Shough, you want to let him be as comfortable as possible. And, you know, the first rounds picks that they've spent on tackles, and then the addition of the 2 guards this offseason, one in free agency and one in the draft, you see that continued investment in making sure that you're protecting your primary assets. And I think it's important. Obviously, the Saints do as well. And I think they've had more hits than misses. So I'm encouraged to see what Edwards brings to the table and adds to this group in this year.
There is definitely an emphasis on improving the run game this offseason from what we saw last year. Starts with the offensive line. They address that, and then they add Travis Etienne. How much better do you think they can be on the ground?
Well, I think it's a group that's improving. You look at, let's start with tackles, and you got Banks and Fuaga who are very talented and are getting better. Both are arrow up players that are young and still, adjusting to the NFL, which we all are. I mean, you're always either growing or being shown the door. So for those 2 young guys, I mean, the sky's the limit. High ceiling players that are very talented, and I think are going to be even better this coming season. And then interiorly, keeping a healthy McCoy makes a huge difference in this front. So whether it's pass protection or your rush attack, when you have the healthy horses and you have your captain of the offense and central figure in McCoy that's healthy and ready to play, it's a different group. So I think the more time they have together, the better they're going to be. And it's obviously important to be able to offset some of these defenses. When you can run the ball, it helps your passing attack even more. So even being able to threaten a defense with a sustained rushing attack is going to be important. I think Etienne's a good pickup for them. And obviously with the AK situation, there's a lot in flux there and some concern, but I think the addition of Etienne is going to be a substantial one, no matter what or how things play out with AK.
Let's keep it right there for a second,
Wait,
Jon.
what are you concerned about? You said
what
concern.
Am I concerned
what are you
about?
About?
I'm concerned that there's a lot of smoke, and anytime you have the face of the program as quiet as he's been, but yet there's so much going on around it, I think there's reason for concern. It's the same thing with the other side of the ball over the past few years. And Cam Jordan has been that anchor point and vocal leader, obviously a productive player. And for both of those players, Cam not being signed currently and AK in a little bit of a situation that is drawing attention, Erin. I know what you're doing there. You put me on the hot seat. That's fine. I'm comfortable with it. I would love to see him sustained and happy and be a Saint for the duration of his entirety of his career. And right now, I think there's some concern that might not happen.
Football wise, how much do you think he has left in the tank? Because the stats weren't very good last year, but I don't think he had a very good supporting cast, dealing with some injuries down the road. Maybe he's not the Alvin Kamara from like 2017, but how much better do you think the team would be with him in 2026? And just in terms of what he brings skill wise, how big of a priority do you think he should be?
I think he is a priority. I think it's more to do with the fact that you did bring Etienne in and you can unload the carries that you're asking of him. He's just as dangerous as a receiver out of the backfield as he is getting a handoff and trying to run between the tackles. So I think with the addition, it is there's some synergy that you can create. I think it's also important that you take a look at the whole picture, and the ask of Alvin has been huge these past couple of years. The number of touches that he gets is up there with some of the most demanding Saquons and Derrick Henrys of the world, of just the overall number of touches that he gets. The offense has been run through him. I think with the addition of Etienne, it doesn't have to be anymore. And he will actually get better with the fewer opportunities because of the wear and tear and where he's at in his career. I think he's still got a lot left in the tank. I think it's more of an evaluation of overall value, and it's still there. So I think this year could be even better for him just because the ask is different. The development around him is better. And it's just a better situation where you're not asking a guy to be 40 to 50% of your offense every week.
You mentioned AK, Cam Jordan, some leaders that they've had in the locker room. Demario Davis exits in free agency. Taysom Hill obviously is not here as well. Who do you think needs to step up more, and how important is it? I mean, you played with Drew Brees. How important is it for that person to be your quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, that's the most natural just because of the uniqueness of the position in the NFL. There are teams that can operate without that being the case. I think the Saints have probably fallen under in that category for the past few years. We've had some good leaders. It helps when they're great. And Shough being a young player, can't really fall back on that anymore just because of the demand of the position. And I think all eyes will turn to him, as they have, especially towards the end of last season, that, his performance was starting to draw the attention. It also builds a platform for the other players in that locker room to listen to that voice. And so he doesn't have to do it alone. You want some other voices in that space. But like you say, this past season, loss of Matthew, loss of Demario Davis and Cam more recently, even though there's still a question that he potentially could be walking right back in the door. But that's a lot of veteran voices and the identity of that locker room that has changed. And it has created a little bit of a void. And I'm not going to be the one who sits back from 2 states over and says who it should be. The locker room will speak. The locker room will decide. And you look back and when the Saints are at their best players are also the most selfless leaders in that locker room. So for some of the teams that you think, man, we had some talent but fell short of the mark, I think there was a void in leadership, and that hasn't been the case. I think more than anything, we've created synergy at times and played better than our roster would probably allow. And this coming season, somebody's going to need to step up. Obviously, Shough would be the preferred person, especially offensively, to speak into that space.
And we've had these conversations a lot during the offseason, John. We know it's going to be emotional talking about Alvin Kamara potentially not being on the team, Cam Jordan, Demario Davis already with the Jets. But Kellen Moore also deserves the opportunity to bring in his own guys and establish his own leadership. When you were playing, they let go of guys like Dante Stallworth to bring in some younger guys. And obviously that worked out as you made the transition from Jim Haslett to Sean Payton. Now Kellen Moore going into his second season. What did you see from him as a rookie head coach, and how excited should Saints fans be as he kind of puts his imprint on this franchise going forward?
Well, I think that's an important thing. If history teaches us anything, you look at the Dennis Allen transition, and it was almost as if the expectation was, we want you to run the this team, this system that's already in place. We're just, needing a new voice. And with Coach Payton walking away, I don't know that initially there was that opportunity for DA to come in and say, hey, this is my team. We're going to do it my way. Kellen is not the guy who's got the bravado to say it's my way or the highway, but yet you see the pieces that have fallen in place during the 12 plus months that he's been at the helm, where he's making it his own. And I think that's the way it should be. You can't ask someone to step in and not be able to do it their way with their people. And, transitions are hard, fans are loyal, and the game is not. And at times that's a struggle. It's a struggle as a player to recognize it, that as much as you preach, big team, little me, be selfless, you want to do that, but you also recognize this is a business, and the fans more than anything are going to be loyal to the wins and loss column, and their team success is always going to be more important. You want to be able to do it with guys you like and you love and you've been cheering for, but at the end of the day, when you're lifting Lombardi trophies, those guys become your guys. And it's hard when you make some of those decisions, especially financially, when they're financially based. But it's one of those where you have to put your business hat on and understand there is a price for everyone in every position. And once you get outside of those bounds, it makes for difficult decisions, but you have to always keep what's best for the organization at the forefront.
You mentioned big team, little me. That was one of DA's slogans. I remember the T-shirts. They were.
Oh yeah,
they were
those
wearing
date
them
back
practice.
to 70s and 80s. I mean, they've been around a long time, but it's tough now to get guys to buy in, especially in the NFL, where it's like, big team, little me, and especially when we get to contract times in the off season, that me seems awful little in the big picture, because I'd love to be a part of this team, but I want the value and respect that deserves.
When you look at this team, they have put a big emphasis on creating that closeness in the locker room. The chemistry that you alluded to really helps talented teams take that next step. With even a contract situation with Chris Olave, he's showing up every day. He's committed to the team, even though he's working on that extension. I do feel like this room is pretty tight. They've had conversations. Everyone shared their stories of the closest locker rooms that they've been in, what worked and why, and how they can build that here. I mean, you played on one of the best teams, the best team ever for the Saints. So what is that X factor for this team to get back to that level?
Yeah. One, you have to have a baseline of talent, right? No matter how close you are. I mean, if you don't have a competitive roster full of players, it's going to be a challenge. You can exceed expectations. You can be good to really good, but really good doesn't win championships. And you have to be able to move from really good to elite or great in those spaces. So you look at the roster, and there have been incremental improvements across the board, which that's what the Saints needed. If anything, I think you look over the past few years, and it was a lack of depth. There was some cap issues that kind of limited rotations to where if a guy gets hurt, and they did, we didn't have a capable, competent person to step into that space. So that's always going to be forefront of any management, is saying, hey, we at least have to raise the bar, the standard across the board talent-wise to be competitive. Now, when you talk about locker room and synergy, there's an 80-10-10 rule, right? Where 80% of the locker room is looking to who are we going to be? And when you've got the 10% at the top, who's the loudest voices, the great leaders who are also great players, the 80 will follow them. When that chemistry gets off a little bit, you can stand to have a turd or two in the mix, right? I mean, we've had some bad apples come along that are great players, and they are a little bit of the outliers because the heartbeat of the team, the overall identity of the team can sustain it. And it's not where a few bad apples have spoiled the entire well, if you will, because you've got great leaders. You almost need it. Now, when it can flip so quickly, and we've seen that here. I'm not going to name names, but when I saw a C on a player's chest going, he may be a good player, but he is a bad person. And the team kind of reflected that. There was some selfishness and where you need some selflessness as a team. And you want to be able to look at that ratio and say, we've got some really talented players and we've got some really good leaders, and we're not going to mess with that chemistry to a point where it can flip. And when it flips, it does it pretty quickly and it becomes a toxic situation.
Great observation. And the team's also becoming younger. Saints fans are really happy about the draft class last year, and they're hoping for the same, obviously, with this season. And we're going to ask you about Christian Miller and Oscar Delp on the show today. But before we get into the football side of it, I'm curious. You and Christian Miller, y'all are both from the Atlanta area. And I saw throughout the draft process that he had a lot of family that were Falcons fans. And a lot of them were on record saying, we're not Falcons fans anymore, right? Like, to hell with the Dirty Birds. Did you go through similar when you came from Atlanta to play for the arch rival here in New Orleans?
Just to be clear, in the state of Georgia, there are very few true Falcons fans. So they're usually Georgia fans. And then on Sunday, if the team is doing halfway decent, then they'll buy a hat. But there's no loyalty in Falcons fandom. It is nothing close to what you get with the Saints. And in the state of Georgia, it is college football. And, I still like football, so we have another game on Sunday that we can watch. It's not the same. So for those, yes, I got the text messages. Yes, I got the calls from family that would say, I'm going to root for you, except for 2 games a year. Like, all right, guy. And if you had a holding call or something happens, yes, you get your phone will blow up saying, I saw you screw up. All right, guy. That will happen for them. But all in all, most fans and family recognize that, there's not a huge loyalty to the Falcons to begin with. So I don't think they have Christian or any of them, Oscar included, have that much to worry about other than, a snarky text from time to time.
I love your ability to just throw shade straight up. Like, they don't have fans. Sorry, it is what it is.
Hey,
when
it's
you
true.
look at Oscar, when you look at Oscar,
go to a game,
and Christian, yeah, I know they struggle. There's not a lot of fans there.
That's the point. So I live outside of Atlanta. I'll go to the Saints games when they come to town. The Mercedes-Benz Stadium is packed with as many, if not more, Saints fans, even when we're not having our best years. And that same can't be said for the Falcons. If they're not having a great year, then there's a lot of empty seats, and it's a lot of visiting teams that fill that space. So there's no loyalty like there is for the Saints. I mean, even the years that preceded mine, which is a long time ago, the Saints fans were loyal. I mean, they're showing up to the game and cheering their fans, their players on, even if they're wearing bags over their heads. So at least they know who they belong to, and there's loyalty there. So sorry, soapbox, I'm off it.
No, you're good. You're fine. They show up, even if there are bags on their heads. They're still in their seats, and they're there. When you look at Oscar Delp and Christian Miller, the 2 Georgia Bulldogs that the Saints now have as their rookies, you spent a lot of time watching film on both of these guys. So what are the Saints getting? What can we expect from them this season?
Yeah, well, the NFC South went heavy on Georgia players. I mean, you look at the Panthers and the Falcons, both, spent early picks on some Georgia talent. And the Saints said, I'll do one better. I'm not just getting one guy, I'm getting 2. And really talented players. Christian Miller is a guy that I think he anchors really well in the run game. He takes on double teams. I think you look at the history of Georgia defensive linemen, and they've had a lot of success. I think they're coached really well. Trey Scott has been there. He's had Trayvon Walker, who is the number 1 overall pick, go to the Jaguars. Obviously, half of the Philadelphia Eagles front is former Georgia Dogs across that front. Same thing for the Packers. They've got, Devontae Wyatt. Devontae Wyatt, I think, is a good comparison to Kristen in that he flashes in the pass game. He's good against the run. I think Kristen Miller is probably better against the run than Devontae was, who was a first-round pick for the Packers. So I think once he gets down to New Orleans, working with BY, Coach Young, if you will, and starting to really develop his pass rush, will complement what he's already really strong at in recognizing run fits and opening up lanes for those linebackers that are going to play behind him. They're going to like having him in front. And on the other side of the ball with Oscar Delp, I think situationally, I watched, all the Georgia games, and you see our offense, Georgia's offensive line struggled early on last year. And so they had to ask him to do a heck of a lot more blocking because he's capable of doing that, not because he's not a skilled receiver. Whether it was in the run game or in the pass game, you see many times he was lined up, either hand in the dirt or motion at the point of attack, and would hold up in the run game and could also help in pass protection, which was not Georgia's strong suit early on. So you look at statistics and you're like, I don't know that Oscar Delp is a good wide receiver. That's baloney. I mean, he's very capable. You see him out in space. You see his after the catch ability to extend plays, contested one-on-one routes. He's a good receiving tight end that situationally, because he was able to block, he was asked to do that much more. And so it kind of suppressed his statistics, which, for those that are just looking at numbers, you're like, I don't know. But now two really good players that I expect to have a lot of success for the Saints. I think both are going to be in the league for a long time.
Hopefully so. Hopefully they contribute from their rookie years. I agree with you about Oscar Delp as a receiver. Seems like there's some untapped potential there. But kind of looking back a little bit, John, I know so many people ask you about the 2009 season, winning the Super Bowl and stuff like that. But I've said on shows like this before and just talking to friends, in my opinion, the best season in the history of the Saints is not 2009. It's 2006, given everything that happened, the context, Hurricane Katrina, the franchise not having any kind of success prior to that year. So when it comes to 06, I'm sure everybody asks you about the Monday night game, the reopening of the Superdome, but are there any less talked about memories that stand out to you from that year? Everything that's going on, new head coach, new quarterback, city just experienced that disaster. What are some of your favorite memories from that very special season?
Absolutely. For good and for bad, I don't think an organization has made more progress than the Saints did in a single calendar year than the Saints did in 2006. I mean, you're coming off of Katrina. We didn't know whether the team was going to be, moving to San Antonio or somewhere else. There was a lot of heartache and heartbreak just as people. I mean, you see neighbors that are struggling and your community that's struggling. And we turn over 2/3 of the team and bring in some new faces, and you don't know the direction that we were going to go. And a first-time head coach, a quarterback that you signed that Miami went a different route, who's got a shoulder that's torn up. You don't know that he's going to be the Hall of Famer greatness that Drew brought to the team. And they also had one of the historic best draft classes. Well, all those things were uncertainties at the time. And there were so many memories, not to mention, I think one that stands out that you try to block out as a player is the 6 straight weeks of training camp at Millsaps in Jackson, Mississippi, where it would only rain between 2-a-days. And that was back when we had real 2-a-days. And we had signed a couple of veteran linebackers that, 9 and 10 year guys that were there to help, that decided retirement was a better choice than to continue to torture themselves. And since I've had conversations with Joe Vitt and Coach Payton, and they laugh about it. And I think, it's funny because it was successful, but I don't say this lightly. It took years off my life having lived through that training camp. It was one of those things where you understand why we're doing what we're doing. You understand that there is a necessity for this level of evil that we endured. And when you're trying to create, not only change, wins and losses, but we're trying to change a culture top to bottom. There are some growing pains, and boy, did we go through them. But with that said, it also brought some great memories. So, obviously that first home game back in the Dome, it was 11 on 500,000 in that area. So we knew that the entire city, the entire community, the region was with us. And one of my favorite memories was obviously that game, but just that season and recognizing that, coming off a year of 3-13, and we make it to the NFC Championship and head to Chicago and freeze, don't play our best, but also recognize we're way ahead of schedule. And this team has some fundamental pieces in place from which we can start building that can lead to success. I think 2009 does not happen if we don't have 2006, a few years prior, that made such a huge jump, not only with wins and losses and success into the playoffs, but organizationally of just who we are and identity.
Can you talk to me a little bit about that day? So much has been talked about what happened in the game, but what were the days leading up or the hours leading up to that game like, running out of the tunnel, feeling all the energy in the city? What was the actual day like leading up to the game?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it starts well before that. I mean, you recognize the last images that we had of the Dome was a horror show, and straight out of the movies, where you're seeing just the devastation in the area, but also the heartbreak that lives were lost in the Dome, and seeing pictures of the ceiling falling in and families that are just in shambles. And that is the last image that we have of the Dome. So I remember Coach Payton had us go practice in the Dome. I believe it was the day before, it might have been the Friday before, just to put a new picture in our brains and recognize that we're still going to be playing football. It's going to be a little different, but Green Day had their concert there. The place was rocking. Usually it wasn't uncommon for after a home game during those years for my ears to ring well through the end of Monday, 24 straight hours of just loud volume in your ear. But I've never heard it louder than that game. Obviously the Steve Gleason blocked punt was uniquely special and galvanized as it should be outside the Superdome to this day. But just that entire atmosphere, it was it's louder, it's more intense than the Super Bowl, because the entirety of the fan base in that place is rooting for one team. You go to a Super Bowl and there's a lot of folks that are like, hey, I get to go to a Super Bowl. Don't really care which team and at best it's split 50-50. Playing at home in that type of environment is unmatched. And it was so emotional. I'm still picturing Mike Kearney and Ernie Conwell, in tears and hugging each other on the sideline. I'm sure many fans have seen that picture or that video.
Iconic photo, yes.
Yeah,
iconic.
Absolutely. And just to be in that moment that extended well past just a moment, it's something that I will cherish forever, recognizing that it wasn't just about our team. It wasn't just about the Saints. It was about our entire region. And it sounds like I'm overselling this right now, but the reality that hope can be felt in that region, that I think there was so much similarities. There were so many similarities between the organization and all of New Orleans and really the entire region, that we'd seen dark days and an organization that had not found success in quite some time, and an area that had just been crushed. And we're going, is there a reason for hope? And you see it and you feel it. And in that game, I think it not only showed a realistic reason for hope for the team, but for the city, that they said, well, if our team can do it, then so can we. And it might sound like an oversell. I don't think it is. That's how I experienced it. And that's how it's always been related to me. It's the reason why 4 years later, when I'm pumping gas at the local Kenner gas station and a fan comes up to me and says, talks about a Super Bowl win, it's not congratulations, it's thank you, because there is such a unique relationship between the fan base and that organization. And they endured those hardships with us and we with them. And it's a unique symbiotic relationship between an organization and its city.
Can you begin to anticipate what the 20-year anniversary is going to be like this year when the Saints have the Falcons on Monday Night Football? Although, and here is a moment to get back on your soapbox about the Falcons. They pushed back on it being the actual week of, but
week 4 instead of week 3.
It is going to happen on Monday night.
Yeah. Hopefully the results of the actual football game are better than the 10-year anniversary, which I think we lost. But hey, let's flash forward to this year. 20 years. I think for all those that lived through it, and you look at it and you recognize how so much has grown and changed, but also recognize that so many bonds and relationships and foundational pieces that were in place 2 decades ago still exist today. I think there's an appreciation as a fan, as a active, I don't know how active, but still a part of the organization. I feel like I am forever connected and a part of the Saints lore and history. There's an appreciation for what we've been able to do. We being the city of New Orleans and the surrounding area and the New Orleans Saints. And I think there's a deep appreciation for what that is for all of us.
Well said, John. And I think there's a deep appreciation for what you guys did, because I grew up a Saints fan, and, prior to 2006, there just wasn't very much team success, but you guys kind of set the standard, and we talked about 06, want to talk a little bit about 2009. We hear so much about Drew Brees, Sean Payton, but I feel like you guys don't get the necessary credit. That offensive line as a unit was so good with you and Jonathan Goodwin and Jari Evans. Is there an underrated player, maybe specifically an offensive lineman from that team, that you think deserves a little bit more credit?
Well, it's funny. I think you look back, and at one point or another, the 5 of us all went to a Pro Bowl at one point or another in their career. So whether it was a young Jermon Bushrod who's stepping in at left tackle and going up against, and I'm the other tackle, and it was a nightmare scenario where you're going, all right, biggest stage that football offers, and you're talking about 2 perennial Pro Bowlers and Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney, and for a young player like Jermon to be able to hold up and do as well as he did. This was before he became the Pro Bowl, recurring Pro Bowler that he was at left tackle. I think there's some commendment that is due him, but really what a special group. I mean, across the board, Jermon, Carl Nix, Goody, Jari, me, Streef's the 6 offensive linemen who is one of the best to represent the Saints, even before he became a starter and the voice of the Saints for a few years, and moved on to continue to pour in at the NFL level. But
still eligible.
What a special
Love
group.
The number 71 is eligible, by the way, when talking about Streef. That was a running joke for a long time.
Yeah, it's 64. You keep wiping. You let him know he's coming in. But what a special group. And we had so many great leaders. You think of Scott Fujita and John Velma and Will Smith and Charles Grant, and guys that were vocal and opinionated, but there was a love in that locker room. Another guy that I think often gets overlooked at times, Jabari Greer in the secondary, and we just had some playmakers across the board, and some guys that never really got their due. Marcus Colston comes to mind, a guy who, you're looking back and you think this might have been one of the best offensive groups for a decade under Coach Payton, and with Drew Brees and Marcus Colston, and the fact that he never went to a Pro Bowl, which means he's not eligible to be in the Hall of Fame. And obviously Drew gets to go in this year, but as I'm thinking about it, hopefully Jari does soon. Hopefully next ballot he's into the Hall of Fame. But for a group that performed offensively and historically better than I'd say almost anyone over a 5-10 year span, we don't have as many players as you would think that would be eligible for, that post performance recognition. And Colston is certainly one that, he didn't have to say a lot to make a huge impact on the team and on games that probably won't get his due in the long run.
Yeah, probably not. And that's unfortunate because Marcus Colston amongst Saints fans gets so much deserved love and admiration like he deserves, I should say. Towards the end of the interview here, wanted to ask you a couple of fun questions, being an 8-year NFL veteran, some unique stuff that maybe only you could answer. What is, other than the Superdome, because you saw the Superdome at its peak, at the loudest times, but other than in New Orleans, what's the loudest NFL stadium that you ever played in?
Yeah, you know what? We always felt like they pumped noise into Seattle for that being an open air stadium. You just think, man, they are able to generate a level of volume that doesn't make sense. You drive up to the stadium, you're like, I don't think this is going to be loud. And then you're on the field and you're like, I can't hear myself think. So I can only imagine the number of days that after the game, Drew was hoarse because he would be screaming and we're like, I still can't hear you. That would be one of them. I tell you what was a fun experience was playing in Oakland. And this was probably not the loudest. They weren't very good during this year, but Kerry Collins was the quarterback. And it's a fun story, so I'll share it. He's the quarterback. They're not having a great season. There's not a lot of affinity for him as a fan base because obviously they weren't having that great of a year. So we're up, we're winning. They're booing the Raiders every time they go 3 and out. He's hearing about it. Well, he throws this 50-yard bomb touchdown, and some fans cheer, but a lot of them are still booing him. And he gives him the double cobra off and just hangs it. And that's the loudest that stadium got cheering for him as he's flicking him the bird from the 50-yard line because he just, they've been giving him the business all game. And, finally throws this bomb and in his home stadium is, letting him know how he feels. And they cheered for him as like, he's one of our own. So, that's one of it's fun to be able to experience the different stadiums. Obviously playing in Lambeau is pretty cool, or going to Pittsburgh. That's another, difficult place to play, rabid fan base that you get late in the season and it's cold and they're loud. There's some fun places that you get to experience. And then, in a different way, you go to Jerry's World in Dallas and you recognize, I felt like it was a game sponsored by NASCAR in that there was go-go dancers standing on columns and the world's biggest at the time screen that's overhanging the field that you can't see because it's 60 yards long or whatever it is. And it's just fun. And I think that's what fans don't get to appreciate as much as the players, is just being able to go to those different environments and see how the game may be the same, but so much around it is different. It's something that I cherish and appreciate, that it's not always the same experience, but man, it's fun.
You've talked about so many different players, different stories from your time playing. And I got to know, like, as an offensive lineman, you are in charge of keeping the guy behind you protected. So what's the worst time you felt because you didn't do your job?
Awesome, Erin. That's great. That's a heck of a question. I really appreciate that. So what's my worst memory? Yeah. All right. Well, keep it in 2006. And it was the NFC Championship game against Chicago. And I'm playing against a guy who had a really good year, and he was on a heck of a run. His name was Wale Ogunleye. And Adewale had one move that he had success with time and time again. It was just inside club hump that you watch him, and he's gotten, I think he led their team in sacks that year off this one move of his, I don't know, however many it was, 12 sacks, 10 of them came off this one move. So I'm prepared for it. I practiced all week long. I'm going to make sure if he's going to beat me, it's not going to be with this. But as you can imagine where this story is going, it's late in the game, second half, we're down. It's We have not played well. There's only a few flashes of hope, like when Reggie is outrunning the entire Bears defense and he turns and kind of taunts Urlacher at the time. And you're like, okay, well, we're still down, but I appreciate your zeal. Anyway, back to the moment. We're trying to mount a comeback. And of course, Ogunleye hits me with this club inside. He comes underneath, sack, strip, fumble, recover. And that's pretty much the nail in the coffin of our chances to come back and make our way to the Super Bowl. So that, Erin, is my deepest, darkest horror show moment. That honestly, this is sad. It has been 20 years since that day, 2006, 2026, 20 years. And I still have dreams where that will pop up. So the good news was it served as a heck of a motivator to work all off season long and not let that kind of moment happen again. But that, Erin, was one of the worst moments of my life. And I am glad I got to share it with all of you one more time.
Well, if you can't laugh,
yeah.
if you can't laugh at yourself, right? And it still worked out pretty good for you. Had a pretty good career, and now you have a pretty good post-playing career. Congratulations on your new gig with the Georgia Bulldogs radio network. I know you're going to be calling games with Jeff Dantzler this football season, and there's nothing like SEC football, man. You know, I don't have to tell you. I did 9 years of play-by-play for LSU as their Spanish broadcaster, and in that time, I was able to travel to a lot of SEC cities, which you're now going to be able to do. So other than Athens, Georgia, throughout your time as a fan, a player, now as a broadcaster, what is your favorite SEC road trip?
Okay, well, again, I'm not just pandering to your audience, but playing in Baton Rouge, where, this was a unique experience because the streets that led to the stadium at the time, I'm sure it's changed potentially 25 years later, but the streets that led to the stadium were pretty narrow, and we're moving at a snail's pace. And to see there was multi-generations of people that were rocking our bus, and I will remember this hopefully to the day I die. But there was a grandmother who was telling us where we ranked on her list of teams that should lose today, and teaching her grandchild that very signal to our bus. And she was not alone of Tiger Meat. And she was like, had her arm around him. And it's been seared into my brain, this moment, as we were coming down to the stadium in Death Valley, of these fans from every age, just letting us know where we ranked and what they thought of us. And then it was such a cool stadium because it was a night game at the time, and you can't see anything but stadium and lights, like no surrounding city. So it felt like we were all alone, and with what felt like 100,000 fans screaming at you and letting you know that it was going to be a tough place to play. But that was a fun place. We played in Neyland Stadium at Tennessee, and back when they were really good, coming off some national championship runs. And this was, I want to say it was Coach Rick's either first or second year, but this was an important game for us as a program. But we get down, and they score a long touchdown, and the stadium is so loud. This is when, 117,000 or 112,000 fans, when they had added 15,000 seats without making any renovations. They just painted the numbers closer together to just jam more people in. But it was so loud, I felt like the field was reverberating. And then we go in and score to take the lead with like 42 seconds left and win the game. That was a pretty cool moment in a hostile environment. So there's a lot of cool places to play. Death Valley is certainly one of them.
Good stuff. Yeah. No place like it. Jon, thanks so much for the time today. I'll pass the baton here to Erin in a second to let her give her final thoughts. But as far as me, you gave me goosebumps with some of the memories today from the 2006 team. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your perspective. Hope to do it again sometime soon. Erin?
Yeah, definitely going to have you on again. I'm glad you're staying in the industry. You're a talker, so it suits you well to be on the broadcast and continue down that path.
Yeah, long-winded.
So,
I got it, Erin.
yeah, no, you're good. It was great storyteller. But thank you so much. And I don't know, before we let you go, Saints back in the playoffs this year?
Yes, I think they do. I think they have the chops this year to make a run into the playoffs. You know, at that point, the ball has to bounce your way, even if you're the best team in football. So I think right now, with where they're at, with the development of some of the young players, they've had to make some difficult decisions. Guys still have to grow up and step into their roles. But based on what I saw at the end of the season and the moves that they've made this offseason, I do think that this is a playoff-worthy, challenging team in a conference that still remains up for grabs. So I like what I saw in Shough. I think you've got a lot of key pieces in place across that offensive front, and you've tried to supplement either through free agency in the draft last year and this year in meaningful ways that should impact this overall roster and the 22 that you're going to deploy week in and week out. So arrow up organization, absolutely. And I think this is the year where you get back in the playoffs.
That is Jon Stinchcomb, ladies and gentlemen, living up to the title of the show with his last commentary there. We all believe in the Saints, as that will do it for us here today. Don't forget to hit subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. For Erin Summers and Jon Stinchcomb, I'm Mario Jerez saying thank you for watching Believe in Saints. We will talk to y'all soon. Who dat?